right, we started hitting today. Really, really hitting, but not super duper hitting like you're trying to kill somebody on the opposing side. But it really starts to show some things. And while the hitting did start today, we also have to remember that these guys know each other. And so for the certain defenders and certain offensive players, you have a real understanding of what each individual can do. And it makes things sometimes easier, sometimes harder, because the opposition knows you almost as much or as much as you know them. So the pads are definitely a good thing. But once we get into the scrimmage time, that's going to take this up to another notch. And then preseason games, players are playing pretty hard. They're not regular season or postseason. So we're notching up. So there's a bunch of little things today. Again, whatever we're seeing, even at this point, I wouldn't get too crazy about it. But we're adding more and more data points. So that's what I'm going to cover here today. It's not going to be too long. Snapping issues was a big thing that people were talking about. There was some bobbled snaps from Brewer. There was some bobbled snaps from Driscoll. And obviously they got to get better. But Brewer's a new guy, Driscoll's a new guy, and a new guy learning how to snap. So let's see how this plays out. Brewer didn't have a lot of snapping issues. It'll take a little time for them to get comfortable. But he's got to get that down. Some people really like Brewer. I think there's certain things he's good at. But Connor Williams is a superior player at every level, except for the snapping. And the snapping did hurt us. So Brewer, if he can at least get that snapping down and then use his assets to get to the next level and some other things, it will be good. But if he can't get the snapping down, then it's a real bust. But I think he will. Driscoll, too, why don't we have real center, a backup center? I mean, it's nice. I don't know if we're trying to keep 8 this year. I still think Driscoll's getting all these reps, just in case one guy goes down, you got a third. But I also tend to think that Eichenberg will start at right guard. And if he's starting at right guard and something happens to Brewer, they want to bring Driscoll in and keep Eichenberg there. He's going to make about almost $5 million a year this year. If he doesn't start at right guard, there's no reason to keep him. I mean, you should cut him. If you don't cut him, what is that saying? You're paying $4 million for a backup? And I think really, he really loves his picks, and certain picks he loves more than others. I think he wants to get this to work, and I don't see how any way you can keep Eichenberg at his value unless he's starting. He's not starting at center. He definitely has the ability to come and fill in that spot, but I think right guard is where he's going to start. And if not, if we get somebody in there that's better than him, what we do there is going to be very, very interesting. So I think that deal, but I wouldn't get too crazy on the snapping thing right now. Chop and Paul had a long day against each other. Chop had some good moments. There was a moment where Paul buried Chop. Chop couldn't use his power. He made some moves inside and he got stalled. But some other reports were saying he had the better end of the day against Paul. Chop did. Paul also had an issue where they were going outside and the defenders split him and a tight end. I think his pass protection is going to grow much quicker than his run blocking. Somebody who's been going to the practices gave me some bird's eye information. I think he knows what he's talking about. And he said, look, Paul is raw. He was super raw. And if you can get him to a point where in games where it's a blowout, garbage time, trash time, and get him in there, and you can do that, and he can look good, I think that is the point you really want to hope for this kid to get at. And I think something that points to that is Lamb was working at both tackles. And I said that too. He is going to, if Teron goes down, Lamb comes in. Jackson goes down, Lamb comes in. They don't want to bring out Paul because while he looks good in certain things, there are certain areas where he doesn't. But there is time. Let's see how it plays out. I think this kid is a year 2 kid, and there's nothing wrong with that. If he comes out as year 1 and can contribute in real time, That's going to be unbelievable. But I kind of think that's where it's going. Further news on the tackle situation. Tehran's coming in tomorrow. I think that's going to change stuff. That's going to be very interesting when Tehran comes in. He changes everything, you know. But we're still not at the point where this is just still vanillas, but we do get the contact. So we got to see how this plays out. Ramsey had a couple days that were tough. He had a good day today, a pick. So I don't really worry about that too much. Further news in the defensive backs. Boner had a wonderful play. I think it was Waddle's talking about how he's a really great jumper. He broke up a play on Waddle. And Cam Smith, the second-round pick, who really is struggling with injuries. He had to get helped off by trainees yesterday. He's not in today. It's concerning is how long this will drag out. I think you're seeing a guy who tends to get injured a lot. And there was some things going on with him last year and also in college. And so you have to wonder what's going on. There's plenty of time for this kid. But it looks like Boner, Kohu, and Needham are battling out. Needham had a good day in run stop. Kohu is having a good season. So it'll be very interesting how that plays out. But what the deal is with Cam Smith, he needs reps. He's a second-round pick. It's his second year. You know, say what you want. If Greer gets guys and they develop by year 4 or 5, it's still not good. It's better than not developing, but you got to get guys in to contribute right away. And he's a guy that really has to. So that's pretty much for the secondary here. Again, Alf loves Jordan Brooks, and he is shining practice after practice. Sack today, multiple stops. And so these data points are really coming together. I'm very, very excited to see how he plays. Obviously in preseason, scrimmages. But, man, if we can get a guy that's 250 who's fast enough to cover H-in on a deep one-route post and make blitz and use that big body to make tackles, having a real legitimate middle linebacker is something we haven't had in a long, long time. There's guys here I like for one role and not for another. So far, he is looking like a 3-tool middle linebacker. And I mean, it's going to be tremendous. It will take so much pressure off this front. And when you get Chubb and you get Phillips in here, it's going to really accentuate things. So this is something I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that I didn't dislike Brooks, but I was like, I need to see for a few reasons. But man, he is trending in a great direction, guys. And when you have a nice Mike linebacker, whew, that makes life a lot easier. So keep your eye on that. And then the tight end battle. A lot of people are really high on Jody Fortson. I've kind of over the years never remembered Tana's name. He's been a lot of talk about him, but it really has been all talk. He's been injured. He's been out. He really hasn't done much anything. So I didn't really bother remembering the guy's name, but I think it's Tanakana. So I'm going to kind of try to drop that thing. But he is starting to pop, and he's popping more than Fortson, who's having a bunch of drops. And so I still don't know. I mean, you've got Hill, you got Smythe, and then you got Jonnu Smith. That's 3 tight ends. And I said the 6th wide receiver or the 4th tight end is going to be a big philosophical tell for us, and it's going to be very interesting. I'm very interested to see how this plays out. I think Tanakana, because this regime, along with Greer, has a tendency to really like guys and believe in guys and stick with guys. And so I think that if we do keep a 4th, it could really be Tanakana. That I think is going to be. He's small though, so he's a receiving kind of guy. It was said Smythe talked about that Hill was the strongest tight end in the league, and that's really good. But it comes down to technique, so it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I wish I could see Hill some more. I wish I could see these guys more because, I'm really operating on secondhand information. So I think that to me, where Hill is at is so interesting. And then does Tanner make the case to come for the 4th tight end? and bump out Fortson. So I think that's really interesting, guys. I think that's really the totality of what we're seeing so far. It's still early. There's a lot of guys that weren't in today. A bunch of vets, Fuller and Mostert. No, Mostert was in. A bunch of guys, Tehran. So it's still not there. This is, even though it's contact, it's the early portions. If you know contact, they're going to start drumming this stuff up. And then once you get the bodies ready with those hits, and then the scrimmages, these guys, when two teams come together, you can't help but compete at a different level. And so it's going to be very, very exciting. So that's the totality of it all, guys. We are getting very, very close. I really wouldn't worry about too much stuff at this stage. I think the only real thing that I would say is something we need to be a little concerned with is Cam Smith. You don't want to waste that pick. And you don't want this kid to be hurt long term, because it's very hard to bring him in when he's struggled as much as he had. And a lot of the things last year they talked about with Fangio, he was injured a lot, like 4 or 5 times. So let's hope he gets back quickly. He's got talent. He's a big pick for us. And so that's really it. Everything else is kind of there. One last point, Dudley Do-Wrong showed the top 100 picked by fellow players and showed that Tua was picked 36, which was higher than Burrow and Herbert. And so a lot of people will say, I don't really like Tua too much. Well, the other players kind of rated Tua higher than them too. And it's not to indict anything, but I thought that was interesting. And so I appreciate Dudley Do-Wrong putting that one out. Anyway, so guys, be well. Go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.